It is approximately almost 10 after 1. I think I should. I made a good episode. Unfortunately, the sound was way too low. That's so unfortunate that is life. On one hand, well, I'm not going to apologize for it, but it was very difficult discussing and certain things I have. I think I mentioned the pedophile and rape and such things. Um, it's for me, it's nice to get out of it, emotionally out of it. Next episode will probably deal with this is after my mother died, and um, I had a problem with two gentlemen, one of whom would call me a faggot. It's very funny, I'm telling you. And he's a social worker or something. It's so weird. Our system here in Ontario is bizarre because you'll give anyone a job function who can't even do the job. But this story right now, this reality right now, has to do with Mrs. Ross and Elva-Jane. This is absolutely true. There's no exaggeration to these things. Um, Ever since the hemorrhage, I have a problem remembering names. But those two names are so entrenched in my memory that I will remember them until I die. Mrs. Ross was a teacher at Quoshena Elementary School, and Jane. Alva Jane was a year older than I was. Um, I think I was 6 or 7, or she was 7 or 8, something. Um, I didn't know where she suddenly came from. What I did know, her parents had been in a car crash and died in Washington State. You got to keep in mind, I was born and raised in Vancouver, beautiful Vancouver. God only knows we should never, ever, ever live BC. Never, never. The only comparison to Vancouver and BC is Nova Scotia. And I've thought of moving there because it definitely is cheaper than Vancouver. Well, let's get back to Elva-Jane and Mrs. Ross. After her parents were killed, she was started to be taken care of by relatives, I think, and the relatives lived just down from us. We lived in Quoshena Crescent, and their house was on Aspen and 33rd Street. As hot as areas go, is beautiful. Like you keep saying, Vancouver, BC, the most beautiful place. You can get rid of Sydney, Australia, or New York City, or Paris, or London, or all cities are not as pretty, as wonderful, and um, place on the face of the planet. It really is a beautiful place. Though you gotta love rain. Um, anyway, Elva-Jane, it's an element of um, discipline. Um, I would learn. Um, but I put that aside for a few minutes. Um, I don't know exactly when I personally saw her, but I do recall when I did see her, remember when I see her, she was um, dragging, or pulling rather, a wagon, a kid's wagon. Do that, did that way back in Vancouver. Bicycles all the time, even little kids riding bicycles, and kids all over the place. There's the same element of fear that there is today. It's so funny how one extreme goes to that way and that way. Um, right now it's too extreme. Because the hemorrhage and some of the people who know me, I think I'm mentally ill and are so incredibly stupid to believe that. Uh, they become fearful of their children, which is odd. Even as a child, I never liked children. So Elva-Jane, who turned out to be really quite brilliant, I would think of this. She dragged her, pulled her wagon along, and she incorporated me in for a reason. I don't know why, but she established the concept of stealing. One second. I like that. Yes, I do. She got me involved. Her theory is to steal some of the plants. And you got to envision in your mind what Vancouver and BC is. It's green everywhere. It's like Washington State, Oregon, Northern California, not Southern California. It's green. Trees, green trees everywhere. Plants everywhere, everywhere. So she convinced me to steal with her some plants. And her idea was to sell them to other house owners. I thought it was clever for such a young one. For me, it was a different matter. I stole one too. At that age, I really didn't know um, what you own and what you do not know. So I took the one I had to my teacher, Mrs. Ross. Now she was not, she was feared by all of her students. Today you can't really say that, but back then you could really, really, really see that. Mrs. Ross was really tough, tougher than tough. She was sort of like a female Thor. So I brought her the plant. She was ecstatic. She loved it so much. Her eyes filled with excitement that I brought her that. And I really thought, how good. So I decided to do it again. This is really, really a stupid move on my part. I stole another plant and I took it, carried it up to her either classroom or or outside of the classroom, probably in the classroom. And when she saw me with a plant, she exploded. No, I really mean she exploded. Teachers are a little different today than then. So, when she saw, one second, sorry. Hello, wait, why? When she saw me with a plant, she exploded. One of the plant owners recognized me and phoned Koshana Elementary School. And if we were in the classroom, she would drag me out into the hallway. And I am not kidding you at all. Her eyes were full of rage. I don't know why. I think she should have seen a psychiatrist or someone who would understand these emotions and why she behaved as she did. But she took her open hand, and with fury, she wrapped it across my face. I ain't kidding you. So what happens to a kid? Any parent or anyone old enough will know how a kid will react in a situation like that, which is 1, 2, 3 seconds, the child will begin to cry, and your shoulders will slump, and the child would just be rather, how, I was going to say depressed, but it's not so much depressed. It's just, it was a shock. It's the word I'm looking for. Shocked by this word that identifies a kind of shock. You have to go to psychiatry to discover that word. She really hit me like that, and then I had to go inside the classroom, and I sat at my seat and looked over, I'm sure, and kept crying. I don't think I had a Kleenex or anything like that, so discreetly I probably moved away the tears. The teacher probably and somehow intermixed Elva-Jane, even though she wasn't there when I stole the plants. Elva-Jane got a beating because of it. Probably she recognized with me and so on, that is the owner of the plants told her and so on. And poor Elva-Jane got a beating by those who took care of her. It's rather sad to lose your parents by a car crash, find yourself in a house and with relatives who would beat her. The worst of them all, though, and I'm telling you, Mrs. Ross had a serious reputation. I really, really mean it. There was a little girl in the classroom, and she liked to talk. One second. I said, she loved to talk. Talk, talk, talk. Never ending talk, talk, talk. One day, Mrs. Ross had enough. And I don't know what school seats are like now, but back then, um, there would be like 2 rows with 3 seats. The very back one was empty. And what she did, what Mrs. Ross did she took the little talker girl at the very end of the row of school seats, bent her over, lifted up her dress, and spanked her bum innumerable times. I'm telling you, I told you before in previous episodes, we are an odd species. Really, really odd. And that's why I love absurd. I cannot remember what I do know what I was doing. Every child in her classroom followed the same way. We never looked at them. We looked straight ahead, but we could see what was happening by looking to the side. That's how we saw it. And the sound of the poor little girl, you know. I think she never talked in that classroom again. And it's going to have an influence on her emotions anyway. All of these things do. It's easier to understand if you're 25 or 42. You can accept it more. But when it is a child in elementary school or an infant, it affects them. So, at some point I never saw Elva-Jane again. And Mrs. Ross, I'm sure she passed away, and I think a lot of people sort of appreciate this, that she sort of went her own way. And that's my little story. The next one, did I mention this? About the psychotherapist who should never have gotten a degree in psychotherapist. So very bizarre. I'm telling you, things are today, humans today aren't exactly angels. As I mentioned before, when it comes to 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 million die in the Second World War, it says a lot about us. Anyway, I thought I'd tell you about Mrs. Ross and Elva-Jane. And honest God, if I saw Elva-Jane, and I think, although it seems very low, those seeing me or reading of me, and I do know on the side, as you should know, you should be able to see quietly who is observing and not. But it will go high up. And what I really hope would to see Elva-Jane again, and I would like to hug her. She taught me a little morality. What she taught me is what I own and what I don't own. That's what she taught me. So I would like to hug her and thank her. So thank you very much for listening to what I say. And I think you sort of remember, may, um, might be a story about a psychotherapist who shouldn't have been. I thank you.